It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Israel at war against Hamas. We'll have a couple of updates here coming in just a few moments. Yesterday, the Secretary of State was making the rounds on the Sunday morning news shows. Here he was on Meet the Press.
What do you say about the argument that money is fungible? So Iran may have known this money is coming and used other funds to help fund this attack that happened.
Iran has unfortunately always used and focused its funds on supporting terrorism, on supporting groups like Hamas, and it's done that when there have been sanctions. It's done that when there haven't been sanctions.
So might as well just release all their money.
What a horrible answer. I mean, seriously, the optics from the White House are always wrong.
They could not be any worse.
Yeah.
From the Stafford barbecue that went on Saturday afternoon and evening, that they decided not to put off, not to cancel.
To the president.
As the story was breaking, how do you not say, hey, shut it down? Sorry, everybody. We know you'll understand. And the president just turning his back once again. On that front, I don't think they have a choice. He can't take questions. He can't take questions on anything right now.
Well, you had Blinken there with, I don't know whether it was on purpose or not, but momentarily he told the truth.
Yeah. You know what?
They really don't.
We really don't care. They're going to.
That's how they view it. They're a terrorist state. We might as well enable them.
Yeah, might as well give them their money. They're going to do what they're going to do.
They're going to do what they're going to do anyway, so let's just give them more money. Well, maybe you shouldn't, and maybe you should clamp down on the oil embargo.
Why isn't there an effort to stop this insanity? Why aren't you enforcing the embargo?
It's just amazing. Absolutely unbelievable. I mean, it's
wow.
It's disgusting is what it actually is.
It really is.
Know? And I think there's going to be a lot of criticism today coming from Republicans. Some updates here, just reading from CNN. They have a live updates. Asian Airlines has canceled flights to Tel Aviv. Israeli airstrikes flatten Gaza residential buildings and mosques as death toll rises. Mm-hmm. Germany has to assume its citizens are among Hamas hostages. Sources said. And then just others talking about communities near Gaza border that were badly hit. Thailand confirms 12 citizens were killed in the terrorist attack.
Mm-hmm. And the latest update there at CNN.com, Israel's military says it's retaken control of all communities around Gaza. There's no fighting going on between Israeli Defense Forces and Hamas inside Israel, and the IDF has retaken control of all communities around the Gaza Strip. IDF spokesman said and told reporters on Monday morning. The Times of Israel also reporting the same.
Okay, so that's not inside Gaza. That's the Israeli communities near Gaza.
Right.
That's what they're talking about. Okay.
There's no fighting going on between IDF troops and Hamas inside Israel, and IDF has taken control of all communities around the Gaza Strip.
Wow, just
IDF says from the Times of Israel, the top headline there, the top update, IDF says it has regained control of all Gaza border towns. Terrorists still remain. Now the terrorists still remain, and also coming across the border was about a half hour, 45 minutes ago. Wall Street Journal reporting that activity. They're saying that the terrorists were still coming across the border. But it appears, I guess IDF wanted to put out the word that they were not coming across the border anymore, and that they had regained control there along that border, along the Gaza border.
And just so people may not know it, but Hamas is a group of Iranian-backed terrorists. It's well known.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't that, was Iran involved in this? This is known year after year after year after year. Hamas roughly receives $100 million a year to operate from Iran. From what we now know, while the United States government, while Secretary Blinken and the Biden administration was negotiating to release American hostages in Iran that were unlawfully taken. They hadn't committed any crime. Mm-hmm. These were not spies. And then we unfroze $6 billion of their assets while the United States government was doing that and being accused by Republicans of enabling Iran. And they said that's just ridiculous. We're negotiating, and we're still looking to negotiate a nuclear deal. At the time of these negotiations, mm-hmm. Iran was planning and signing off with Hamas, according to the Wall Street Journal, and even from sources in Hamas and Hezbollah even admitted, no, Iran has been all a part of this. Iran was planning this attack on Israel.
Right.
It's just important to know what suckers we look like as Americans and how they believe we can manipulate the daylights out of it. We can do this. And just you think about it. You think about how the squad reacted and the president coming out on Saturday saying, we're there to defend Israel. See where they are in 2 weeks.
Yeah, right.
See where they are a week from now, if that's still the narrative. Because the narrative always changes, and it always becomes, well, no, now Israel needs to back off. You had, Tlaib and I believe AOC, both calling for ceasefires. The hostilities must stop. They commit the terrorist attack. Israel needs to stop. It's already out there.
Yeah, Israel needs to stand down.
Then
but that's been the call from the left from the beginning, that Israel has no right to defend themselves. And the left can't break from that.
It was interesting because the debate's going to come up. Well, the oppression. Wall Street Journal already hit that one. Oh, the oppression. But I thought this was really interesting because this Real Clear Politics had this Colin Wright's column where he talks about Sam Harris. Now, Sam Harris is a Democrat who has said, I've never voted ever, for a Republican president. But he views liberalism when it comes to the threats around the world as basically insane.
Right.
The way that liberals look at,
right.
Things like Hamas. And he goes, this is a pertinent clip from Sam Harris on the moral difference between Israel and her enemies. The moral difference comes down to an understanding the answer to the question, what would each side do if they had the power to do it? The truth is that there is an obvious, undeniable, and hugely consequential moral difference between Israel and her enemies. The Israelis are surrounded by people who have explicitly genocidal intentions towards them. How do we know? The charter of Hamas is explicitly genocidal. It looks forward to a time when the earth itself will cry out for Jewish blood, where the trees and the stones will say, "O Muslim, there's a Jew hiding behind me. Come and kill him." This is in the charter. This is a political document, as Sam Harris points out. Remember, he's a liberal. He's a liberal who hasn't gone insane as to the threats that Islamic radicalism faces to the United States.
Right.
This is a political document. We are talking about a government that was voted into power by a majority of the Palestinians. That's the document. The discourse in the Muslim world about Jews is utterly shocking. Not only is there widespread Holocaust denial, there's Holocaust denial that then asserts that we will do it for real if given the chance. The only thing more obnoxious than denying the Holocaust is to say that it should have happened. Wow. It didn't happen, but if we get a chance, we will accomplish it. There are children's shows in the Palestinian territories and elsewhere that teach 5-year-olds about the glories of martyrdom and about the necessity of killing Jews. And this gets to the heart of the moral difference between Israel and her enemies. And this is something that I have discussed. This is Sam Harris. To see this moral difference, you have to ask yourself, what would each side do if they had the power to do it? What would the Jews do if to the Palestinians if they could do anything that they wanted? Well, we already know the answer to the question because they can more or less do anything they want right now. The Israeli army could kill everyone in Gaza tomorrow. So what does that mean? Well, it means that when they drop a bomb on a beach and kill 4 Palestinian children, as happened recently, this is almost certainly an accident. They're not targeting children. They could target as many children as they want. Every time a Palestinian child dies, Israel edges ever closer to becoming an international pariah. So the Israelis take great pains not to kill children or other non-combatants. What do we know about the Palestinians? What would the Palestinians do to the Jews in Israel if the power imbalance were reversed? Well, they have told us what they have wanted to do. And we saw what happened over the weekend also. Right. But it's interesting because that's Sam Harris, and he is a liberal. Because there is every reason to believe that the Palestinians would kill all Jews in Israel if they could. Now, would every Palestinian support genocide? Of course not. But the vast numbers of them and the Muslims throughout the world would. Needless to say, the Palestinians in general, not just Hamas, have a history of targeting innocent non-combatants in the most shocking ways possible. And we could go through the list that he gives in the past, but we have this weekend as evidence. That's the difference. It doesn't matter. You're going to assume people.
It's clear for anybody who's paying attention or cares.
You're still going to have the anti-Semitism that's going to be out there that you hear, even from members of the U.S. Congress, as we did over the weekend.
Right.
Members of the squad.
Right. Because they want you to believe Israel has no right to defend themselves. Yep. And that's false.
And we've always said
it could not, by the way.
The moral clarity is.
What happened this weekend should line it out for everybody. If there were anyone up to this point that had their head in the sand and were ignorant to all of this, this weekend tells you the entire story. They were seeking out civilians. That's Hamas. They are terrorists.
866-90 Red Eye.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
The ag sector in recent years has faced several challenges regarding its workforce.
How do ag employers support and create a safe and healthy work environment? How do we think about supporting employers and employees so they have a very stronger level of commitment to this positive work environment? The resiliency of our food supply chain, how we need to address ag labor challenges and instability, how we need to strengthen protections for farm workers, and how we need to expand legal pathways for labor migration.
And according to USDA Farm Production and Conservation Deputy Undersecretary Gloria Montano Green, USDA's latest effort to address some of these issues is a new pilot program, the Farm Labor Stabilization and Protection Pilot. Up to $65 million in grants are available to domestic ag employers meeting federal employment criteria, with grant applications due November 28th. More details are available online at www.ams.usda.gov/FLSP. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. As we know, several U.S. citizens confirmed killed in the Hamas terrorist attack in Israel. The National Security Council has said also they believe that Americans are hostages.
Yeah.
How many they don't know yet.
Right.
Even Israel doesn't know how many of their own citizens are at this particular point. Also, I mentioned it before that one airline had suspended. Here's just the list of airlines. I know a lot of people. I got a friend of mine who works for an Israeli company. He has to go over there a couple times a year. A number of airlines have suspended flights to Israel. United Airlines said it operated 2 scheduled flights out of Tel Aviv late Saturday and early Sunday, but have suspended flights to Tel Aviv until conditions allow them to resume. United Airlines issued a travel alert for October 7th through the 14th. Those impacted who fall under certain criteria can reschedule their trip with waived fees and fare differences. Air Canada announced it is temporarily suspending flights to Israel as of yesterday, impacting flights scheduled for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday between Tel Aviv and Toronto and Montreal. Those who choose to change their flights to another date between Sunday and October 21st can do it for free. American Airlines also issued a travel alert on Sunday for those traveling to, through, and from Tel Aviv, allowing passengers whose flights scheduled through the 21st to change their flights for a waived fee under certain conditions. Delta said it canceled flights to Tel Aviv through this week and will continue to make schedule adjustments as needed. In a travel alert online, Delta said the airline would issue travel waivers for rebooked flights traveling on or before October 21st. You see the U.S. State Department has issued a travel advisory for Gaza, urging people not to travel to the region due to terrorism, civil unrest, and armed conflict. At least they said terrorism.
Yeah.
They didn't say militancy.
Right.
The State Department said passengers should exercise increased caution when traveling to Israel and the West Bank, also due to terrorism and civil unrest. So I think the civil unrest is all due to terrorism.
Yes.
They didn't have to add the civil unrest.
No, not necessary.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what the next move is by Hamas. I said during the break, I'm wondering how many Iranian operatives might be actually on the ground right now fighting with Hamas. It wouldn't be beyond, if you look at what Hezbollah and Hamas both said, Iran was central to the planning. You know, by the way, if anybody had any questions, you touched on it earlier. This isn't just a conversation. Well, we know this goes back to, actually, we do know in this case, absolutely without a doubt, that Iran is behind it. And it wouldn't shock me if you had Iranian operatives on the ground helping to call the shots with Hamas.
Well, we know because Hamas and Hezbollah has said both that Iran has been,
part of the planning and the bloodline, basically, for this.
All their activities. And Hamas came out yesterday and said, yes, they are.
Yeah. No, they both. So that's not even.
Right.
It's not even in question anymore. So now the question would be, how involved might they be in terms of actually having fighters on the ground? That wouldn't shock me. And the big question, where is the hole in intel? Israel, the U.S., and the Western world. How was this missed?
Call in and get a word in edgewise. Eric Harley and Gary McNamara on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley and I'm Gary McNamara. You know, we were just mentioning before the bottom of the hour. I mean, how does this happen to the extent that it did? You know, where is the intelligence failure here?
Mm-hmm.
And reading here from the Washington Examiner, Tom Rogan, their military analyst, and he says the most likely answer is that a very small group of Hamas leaders kept their plans hidden from all others until the last moment. It is likely that many of the gunmen who entered Israel on Saturday were not told of the attack plans until the very last moment, where preparations had to be discussed. They were probably disguised as training exercises. Israeli intelligence penetration of Hamas in terms of human agents, technical and signal intelligence is deep, but no intelligence surface can yet beam itself inside an enemy's mind. The sense of shock that no one saw this coming will only encourage the Israeli government to adopt a harsh response. And I would say that's probably true and going to be the response. You know, and that's the one thing. I mean, I know that, you know, you talked about Iran operatives in there.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume that Israeli intelligence, even human assets inside Gaza, are probably there. And American CIA operatives are probably there too.
Yes.
You know, it's one of the hottest places in the world.
Oh yeah, no, it's the point that is it's always about to reach a boiling point.
Right.
At any moment it could reach a boiling point, and so there are intel, personnel there from a number of different countries.
Right, exactly. I mean, I guess if you want to take an example of it, if you want to look at Zero Dark 30, remember in Pakistan the number of CIA operatives that they showed in there, which may not be fully true, but when I say fully true, the amount, because there seemed to be an awful lot of people that worked for the CIA inside of Afghanistan that were covert.
Right, sources.
Sources
that were inside.
Yeah. Not just sources, though, because sources sometimes may not be working for the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
These were people obviously working for the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at that and you go, wow, we actually have human assets like that on the agents on the ground, covert agents. Yep.
Yeah.
That's what they do. So you would assume, they were there. So, yeah, I understand what he's saying here, that things can be kept, between a few people and you can do it. But is that the case, or are we going to find out that there were signs that we knew about? And
it would be hard for me to believe that Israel's intel would not pick up on that, or that they would know about it, or that they loosened up their standards in any way when it comes to Hamas, especially with knowing that, like the rest of the world, that Iran was now going to be emboldened and empowered by billions of dollars, thanks to the U.S., that you should be on heightened alert as to what Iran might be able to help Hamas pull off. We go back to 9/11, and it said that Mohammed Atta and maybe one or two others in that group of hijackers were the only ones that knew it was a suicide mission.
Right.
And so that it is reminiscent of that kind of behavior where you train. And also, could it be that Hamas knows in training terrorists to be part of the cause, you wouldn't want to send them if they knew they were going into that scenario? Like what happened over the weekend, how many would do that? And how many would you actually be able to recruit? We've seen with terrorist organizations over the years, the more successful they are, that from their perspective, the greater the attacks that they pull off, the greater the subsequent recruiting becomes. And then when they are ultimately defeated, it's quite the opposite. But in that zone, I wonder, again, this is why I wondered about Iranian operatives. Because it's not that I believe that the the thought behind it, the terrorism or any of it, is going away. But if it appears to be a most dangerous mission, then you quite often don't get that kind of cooperation. And again, 9/11 is one of those examples. You're not telling them the full truth, because if they knew it, they probably wouldn't be there for you. And so how much did Iran invest into this? And were there any Iranian personnel that were part of it, as a part of Hamas?
But then you wonder what some of the training would be, what some of the trade crafts, some things that you look at, because what was being talked about the other day, especially this was an analyst, Middle East Affairs for the Jerusalem Post, was talking about how a lot of what was going on seemed to have the tradecraft of ISIS. For example, the targeting of women.
Right.
It's like the videos of Hamas kidnapping women, children, and the elderly and desecrating dead bodies are in some ways shocking to see. But then again, Hamas has engaged in 30 years of grotesque terrorism and is a vicious, brutal terrorist organization, said the correspondent for the Jerusalem Post, Seth Frantzman, and an analyst for Middle East Affairs, told Fox News on Sunday. Frantzman, author of After ISIS, America, Iran, and the Struggle for the Middle East, said the images of Hamas's attack conjured up what ISIS did in Iraq and other places where they purposely targeted young women.
Right.
The video showing men stripping women's bodies, spitting and stomping on them is the kind of thing that makes Hamas very clearly similar to ISIS, and it is a new level of grotesque and horrid behavior that is a clear crime against humanity. But is it calculated? Is it calculated for a reason in order to instill terror?
Well, no, that's the entire point.
The imagery to instill terror, not just in Israel, but everywhere.
But everywhere.
Yeah, don't blank with us.
And,
don't mess with
that
us.
we are powerful, and that we have, and I think that's also why they were very open about Iran's support, because they were telling the world this is not over, and we do have great power. You can add to it the terrorism superstate that is now Afghanistan. And we don't have much intel of what's going on the ground in Afghanistan, but quite possibly quite a bit of training that goes on there. And we've seen it. You know, the traditional, or at least in the last decade or two, you know, as all of this has come about, it was thought that, okay, well, ISIS doesn't work with the Taliban. They're battling the Taliban, and ISIS is battling Al-Qaeda, and and they're all separate entities. They are separate entities, except post-Afghanistan. And what have we learned since then? We know that the Taliban and ISIS and Al-Qaeda are all working within Afghanistan now. Why? It's not just about trying to gain control of Afghanistan and its resources, which would be a revenue stream. It's also about pulling off what they believe is and has always been their goal, and that is killing the infidel. That is killing those who are not willing to convert. And most certainly, and we have heard it time and time again, Iran has said it over the years, they want to wipe Israel off the map.
One of the problems for the administration, you and I talked about it, how the president just turned and walked away as questions were coming out. People want an American president to comment and take questions.
Yes.
At something like this.
And show that he's in control.
Shows that he cares.
Right.
Just basically, I mean, we saw that with Afghanistan.
Yeah, first and foremost.
Where he turned around and you know, I was having a conversation with some people. They said, I can't believe he just turns around and go, well, he did it for when Americans were killed. He did it. When American soldiers were killed, he wouldn't take any questions.
Right.
He turned his back consistently on it. So you think he cares about Israel? But when you look at this, and, you know, we had played the Secretary of State's remarks on Meet the Press, which were just horrendous. I mean, just horrible.
Yeah.
You know, and she said, well, you know, basically, you know, you guys are enabling Iraq.
Yes.
Excuse me, Iran. Not Iraq. Right? You know, Iran. That was that was where she was leading with it.
Yes.
You know, you're enabling them, you're encouraging them, you're unfreezing assets, you're not, their oil revenue, the oil embargo, you're not stopping that oil money from going to them. The last administration didn't. The last administration did cripple Iran economically. You've given them all this money back. Mm-hmm. And, it doesn't matter what we do. They're going to do whatever they want to do anyway. My God, what a horrible answer. And then you take on top of that Blinken's horrendous answer, and then Obama turning, his back and walking away from taking any questions. Then they're having a party Saturday afternoon and Saturday night because the pool reporters could hear the music, and they go, what's going on? They're having a barbecue for the staff and a party there in the White House. The first thing I would want to know immediately on something like this, if I'm president of the United States, first thing is, because I know what a critical area that is, party's done. CIA in my office now.
Nothing happens. We're not having anything on the lawn at the White House.
What the hell what the hell did we miss here? Did we know this was going on? Because I think that, like a lot of things, there is a great possibility that we're going to find out later on that maybe not, you couldn't have stopped it, but there were signs that were out there that were ignored or not passed on the way that they should be passed on.
Right. Yeah.
Not that it would have stopped the administration from doing anything, because you have an administration that has confidence and has had confidence that Iran can be part of the world.
Well, and as you know, it's obviously a paramount for Israel to do as much as they can in terms of their own intel. But they also rely heavily on the U.S. And can they actually do that anymore under the leadership or lack thereof of Joe Biden? And the answer is likely no.
What I'm wondering, will they at least do limited attacks on Iranian assets?
I wondered about that yesterday.
That was the one thing I
wondered throughout the day yesterday, when are we going to see the first on that where you at the very least can cripple them? We know, what happened during the Trump years. One of the first things you could do is a cyber attack like we have pulled off against Iran in the past, in recent years. You want to be able to limit their communications, but it is likely right now that Iran's investment and involvement is already in motion.
Well, I think because of the terror right now, what you might see Israel do, as they've done before, hit any potential nuclear assets that has, because they're either have the bomb or close to developing the bomb, mm-hmm. and that's what Israel wants to stop. Because if you think of the mentality of Israel right now, with those scenes that you see, mm-hmm. where it's just the absolute, these scenes are, if you haven't seen them, you may not want to see them. They're horrible.
Well, no, that's what would scare me.
That all of a sudden you're like, it's a whole different mentality of, we can't let them have the bomb.
Exactly.
Because they'll use it against us.
Right. And anything close to that. Because there's no way that Hamas and Iran didn't foresee what Israel's response was going to be, including clearing out Gaza. Listen, the Israeli officials are saying, if you're in the Gaza, you need to leave now. Well, they know that. Do they have weapons? Do they have another attack that could be coming today? And again, attack when least expected, from another vantage point even.
Well, yeah, Hezbollah.
Exactly.
From the north, yeah.
Yep.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Wow, we didn't even get to the speaker, the speakership. So much going on. I did like the story over the weekend that allies say that because they don't think they say that Jim Jordan and also Scalise have baggage, that actually if you brought the allies of McCarthy is trying to say bring back McCarthy again, he has more support than either of those two and can unify more. It's like,
if that happens, that will be the craziest week in the House of Representatives in a long time. If it turns out he comes back, runs, and gets the votes. Wow.
This is Red Eye Radio on what?